Hi, I'm Gail Sokol, and on today's show, we're going to be talking about ice cream.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
So on today's show, we're going to be actually delving into the world of ice cream. On a previous show, we talked about frozen desserts, and ice cream was one of the classifications and just one type. But ice cream is by far one of the richest, and we love ice cream because it accompanies so many different baked goods and really elevates them to a new level. You get a piece of cake, it's nice. You get a piece of cake or a nice warm brownie and you top it with rich vanilla ice cream or salted caramel ice cream. And I'm like, that's it. I'm ordering that. Forget dinner. I love that. I love that. So let's review the definition of a churn frozen dessert, which is what ice cream is. It starts with a base, which can either be cooked or uncooked. Most ice cream bases include things like heavy cream, half and half, whole milk, or even a combo. It has to be rich dairy. All right, egg or egg yolks to add richness and an emulsifying ability because you're creating really an emulsion of liquid, water-based and fat-based ingredients, and you want them to sort of stay together. And you're also adding sugar and flavorings. So let's understand a little bit about the makings and the science behind creating ice cream. So bases for ice creams, like I said before, can be cooked or uncooked. If you make an uncooked base that contains raw eggs, I would recommend you use a pasteurized egg product, but one that contains the yolk as well, not just the white. So you'll get a different type of a custard or base, because the base is a custard, if you just used a white. So make sure you read the labels. Cooked custard bases are really quite easy to make, although you have to be sure they're chilled thoroughly before you process them. And you will be processing them in an ice cream machine or an ice cream maker. And if you want your machine and use your machine, you really must, if it does come with an insulated freezer bowl, you have to make sure you put it in the freezer, not the morning of, but the night before. Should be frozen for at least 12 to 14 hours before you process this ice cream. And we also discussed on a previous show, overrun. Remember that overrun that we talked about, the volume of how much your ice cream base expands depending on how much air is mixed into it. So the volume increases of your base because you're forcing air into it by your churning. So all ice creams, no matter how decadent, how expensive, brand for brand, they all contain some overrun. But too much can give the ice cream a marshmallowy whip texture. That's really not something that I would consider, ideal. It's not something I really want to taste. This type of ice cream doesn't taste rich at all. It just tastes like light and airy. And a lot of your fat-free ice creams will have a lot of overrun because they're making up for something, right? They're taking away the fat and they're putting in air. So if you recall, in a previous show, we talked about stovetop custards made without a starch, and I showed you how to make a creme anglaise. So again, that rich custard sauce can be used for not only many types of desserts, it can be frozen into a great vanilla ice cream. So what about churning? What does that do for ice cream? Let's go back to churning. So a churned frozen dessert like ice cream is always moving. It's never sitting still. And this ensures that it has that smooth and creamy texture because we're not allowing ice crystals to get larger. They're always moving. They're always breaking up. They're always staying small. And by constantly being in motion, air will be incorporated and those ice crystals will feel better on our tongue ultimately, and we will barely notice them when we eat it. So let's talk about another ingredient in ice cream, fats. Fats are so important in ice cream. A major ingredient that contributes to the texture of an ice cream is the amount of fat that's in the custard base. And typically, the highest quality, creamiest of all ice creams have the most fat. And that is true, all right? You can't avoid it. It is true. And that means the fat is like butter fat from the dairy products and fat from the egg yolks. And what exactly does the fat do for the ice cream? Again, we're going to go right into our kitchen chemistry a little bit. Any water in that ice cream base, because there's water in heavy cream, there's water in whole milk, and there's water in eggs. That water will begin to freeze that ice cream base, right? And the drops of fat will flow freely in between the molecules of water within the base. So picture the fat flowing freely in between those water molecules within the base. And these fats will coat the water. And because of this, they will prevent those molecules of water from joining together and forming larger, grainy ice crystals. So again, smoothness, right? The higher the fat, the smoother the ice cream. So the creamier it will be, the higher the percentage of fat. And this is most true. Take a taste test. It works. So I've experienced this myself. I actually thought, well, I don't have enough heavy cream. For one ice, I remember in particular, I made this one recipe. I did not have enough heavy cream. I was short by like a cup, which is a lot. So I tried to use a low-fat milk. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Horror. The ice cream turned out grainy and icy, and the texture was not ideal. And I made it for my daughter and her friends, and I heard about it afterwards. I really did that, Mom, this was a little grainy. And it really was. I can't help, but I learned from that. I never did that again. So learn from your mistakes. And that's what I have done. So, let's create the most flavorful ice cream. How do you do that? All right. How do you do that? And there is a little science in this too. So we eat with our eyes. We eat with our senses. Sensory perception is most important with ice cream. So the one idea you have to understand in ice creams and frozen desserts in general is that cold foods do not taste as intensely as hot foods. It's very true, right? It's very, very true. One reason for this is that the molecules move faster in hot foods, right? They just happen to be bouncing off each other a little bit faster, and they can register with your taste buds and your nerve endings in your nose much more easily. So in order to prevent the dulling of colder flavors, you have to over-flavor your ice cream base. This I cannot really emphasize enough. They must be bold and more pronounced. So go bold. Don't be afraid to over-flavor your ice cream base. And you really have to taste it. Taste the chilled base before it is going into the ice cream machine so that you can adjust the flavors accordingly. So I've been known to add more vanilla extract or more spices to get the taste I want. And there's nothing stopping you. It is the thing to do. And this is the point, and the only time you can do it is when it's cold and unfrozen. And then you blend in those extra spices or that extra vanilla extract very thoroughly. So another tip to get the best tasting ice cream is to chill the base overnight. And I have said this repeatedly. That several hour mingling of flavors is not just to let the base get cold. It will actually do wonders for your ice cream, similar to aging a fine wine, only you're not going to do it as long. You're just going to do it overnight. So in the fridge, what's happening? So let's go into the fridge, into your ice cream base that's not frozen, but it's sort of hanging out in the fridge overnight. Changes are going to begin to occur within that custard base. First, the fats that are in your dairy and in your egg yolks will become more solid. All right, they'll become more solid at a colder temperature. Next, the proteins within that dairy will swell and they'll bind with any water, creating body and a sense of viscosity and thickness. And sometimes when I've actually allowed an ice cream base to sit overnight, the next day I come back and I whisk it together before I put it into my ice cream machine, and it has gotten thicker. It actually works. It actually has a viscosity to it. So all this aging of ingredients over several hours will translate into a smoother and creamier ice cream. And the ice cream, after it's processed in the ice cream maker, this is when you add your solid ingredients. Let's say you don't just want a creamy, smooth vanilla ice cream. You want to add some chunkiness to it. You want to add some chips or chocolate chunks, or maybe you want to add shredded coconut or chopped cookies or brownies or chopped fresh fruit or granola or swirls of ganache. Don't get me started. Swirls of ganache. I can go on and on. Or even a fruit puree. That is just the beginning of what you can add to your ice cream base. And the way I do it, in order to add them, I take the newly processed ice cream. I actually take it out of the ice cream, the ice cream freezer bowl, and I put it into a large stainless steel bowl. And that's when I, with a rubber spatula, mix in those chunky ingredients before I pack it into an airtight container and freeze it. All right, because it'll mix in a lot easier. Some of these little freezer bowls are very, very tiny, and they're not big enough to mix things in thoroughly. So you're going to mix it in. After you mixed in all your solid ingredients, if there are any, you're going to pack your processed ice cream. And I mean pack it, sort of push it into an airtight container. It could be any type of a container. Make sure it's airtight and it's thick. Good. It will hold the frozen, because it's going to get rock hard. And make sure it's not going to split or break open in the freezer, the container that is. And let it harden overnight. Don't eat it right away. When it comes out of the ice cream maker, it will be anywhere from soft serve texture or consistency, or maybe even a bit softer than that, depending on how much air you put in to your ice cream and how your ice cream maker actually works. Using a rubber spatula, you want to gently remove it from the machine. Like I said, pour it into a clean, freezer-safe, airtight container. If the ice cream doesn't come up to the top of that container, I like to cover it with a piece of plastic wrap, and I put it directly on the ice cream so no ice crystals can form on top of my beloved, really worked hard for ice cream base that I've frozen. Then I cover it tightly with the cover, and I freeze it immediately. Don't allow it to melt. Don't stop to clean your machine out. Run and get to that freezer and put it in immediately, or you will lose that lovely texture and some of the overrun that you created from the churning process. So if you want fabulous ice cream recipes, and I will tell you, my pumpkin ice cream recipe won a major gold medal award in a culinary competition, and I give you that recipe in my new book. Check out my new book, Baking with Success. I have some fabulous recipes. Not only do I have pumpkin, I have cookies and cream, salted caramel, which is extraordinary, and a rich vanilla ice cream that I even give you lots of suggestions for add-ins for some solid ingredients that you can put in. So check out that Baking with Success. It's available online. It's available worldwide. It's available in bookshops, anywhere you want. And there's even an e-version of it. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions, head on over to bakingradio.com and leave me a message. I would love to answer some of your questions on air. And next show, we're going to be discussing marshmallows.